Hi everyone, I am so excited to see you. It is not a coincidence that you and I are sharing this moment right now. Do you know I've been working as a medium for over 25 years, and my eyes are so wide open right now and focused on this deep inner need of an awakening. Like life is consciously connecting to all that is. So I've decided to create the Lighter Side Network, where each show and each host reminds us how the everyday meets the extraordinary. Be it in the realm of mindfulness and healthy living, having an empowered and authentic life with humor, trusting your intuition and communicating with beyond, energy healing and releasing unconscious obstacles, astrology, living in your joy and truth, and so much more. Join us as we share our knowledge and experiences with you. We're going to have so much fun.
Hi everybody, my name is Laura Boone.
Hi, my name is Ursula Lentini.
Hey everyone, I'm Thershna Patel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karen.
Join me on my show.
Are you ready?
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
The Lighter Side Network, where the everyday meets the extraordinary. That's us.
Welcome back everybody. I'm Laura Boone with The Real Ethereal Show. And we're going to do another astrology themed show today. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. A lot of my work with clients in astrology and also a lot of my intuitive work has revolved around this theme. And I don't want to say I'm an expert in this, but I'm telling you, I have sat down and been presented with this information over and over and over again. So I almost feel like it's my duty to really talk about it. So I'm going to devote a whole show today to Saturn. Saturn, the planet Saturn, the energy of Saturn, how Saturn affects us in our charts, and what are the lessons that Saturn teaches all of us. So if you know anything about Saturn, you know, when I came in today and I said, you know, Jesse said, what's your topic going to be? And I said, Saturn. And he goes, oh, that's the bad luck planet. And that's exactly why I want to do this today, because Saturn is one of the biggest gifts that I believe we are all given in this lifetime. And it'd be a wonderful thing for every single one of you, and it would help your life to sit down and figure out where Saturn is in your chart, permanently in your natal chart, but also where is Saturn transiting in your chart right now. Because wherever Saturn is, you guys, that is where your growth is, or most of your growth. That's where the friction is. That's where you're being pushed to make those amazing life changes that are going to make things so much richer and better for you in your life. So yes, it's not the easiest place to be when you're having a Saturn transit, or you have a challenging aspect in your Saturn and in your natal chart, but it is absolutely one of the biggest opportunities that anyone can have in their chart if you become conscious of it. So that's why I love Saturn, and I want to dispel the myths, and I want, if you watch the show, for you to have kind of a different perspective that's more positive on Saturn, and also how Saturn, you can work with Saturn. So first of all, let's just talk about Saturn in general. Saturn is one of the outer planets in an astrology chart. It's also just one of the outer planets in our solar system. You know, the outer planets are considered to be Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, all of those planets in a chart, as you can imagine, because they're so far away, they move very slowly. So, especially when it comes to Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, and I meant to throw Jupiter in there, but I almost don't want to call that an outer planet because it moves a lot faster. But definitely Pluto, Uranus and Neptune, they call those at times generational planets, because when they're aspecting, it can take 15 years. You can have 15 to 20 years of an aspect, which would affect a large group of people in the same way in history. So I'd love to do a show on that one day. I will at some point. But Saturn moves pretty slowly, and on average it rotates around a person's chart, and it varies a little bit because of the angles per person, but 27 to 30 years typically is a Saturn complete rotation around a person's chart. So what does that mean? Typically it just depends on the angles. It will spend years in one house, sometimes a few years, sometimes longer, again, depending on the angle. And when it does a full rotation from the day you were born to when it comes right back around to and hits your Saturn again, that is what a lot of people have heard this term is called your Saturn return. And a lot of people dread their Saturn return. They get really negative about their Saturn return. They talk about, oh my gosh, I'm in my Saturn return. Everything's going to be awful. That does not have to be the case. In fact, a Saturn return can be a wonderful time to reset your life and really get out and pursue your dreams and get on the right path and get the right tools in place to achieve your dreams and reach your goals. So that's kind of how I want to talk about this today. I want to talk about how positive Saturn can be. So Saturn returns. Let's talk about that first. Saturn returns typically, as you can imagine, happen when someone's 27 to 30 years old because of that rotation. And then again, when somebody's mid-50s to 60. So what does Saturn... Well, let's back up a minute before we talk about the return. What does Saturn teach us? What is it all about? Saturn is an Earth. It's ruled by Earth. Its sign that rules it is Capricorn, and that means that it is all about Capricornian lessons. Being practical. Are you practical? So wherever Saturn is in your chart, it's either going to be where you are practical, organized, rigid, goal setting, and hardworking. So whatever house that's in, or it could be negatively aspected, and it could be where you need to apply more discipline, apply more of a work ethic. It could also be where you have challenges constantly in order for you to grow in that area. So that is the sign that matches with Saturn. Let's talk a little bit about why Saturn's called Saturn, because that actually really influences what it's all about. Saturn, the god Saturn, was the two-faced god. And when I say two-faced, I don't mean duplicitous. I mean one face, in mythology, one face faced into the past and one face faced into the future. So Saturn always indicates wherever it is that it's time to take an inventory. It's time to, they always talk about living in the present moment and don't think about your past and don't think about the future because you'll miss the present, right? That is so true, and it's such an amazing spiritual practice. However, when Saturn is affecting you or your chart or you're having a transit, that is not at all what your to-do list is about. When Saturn's affecting you, it's time for you to look at your past and take an inventory and then set your goals. So look to the future and think about, what are my dreams? Where do I want to be in 5, 10, quite frankly, over the next 27 years? Like over this next Saturn transit, Saturn rotation, what do I want to achieve? And when you look to your past, what you do is, Saturn is the great editor. Saturn is the great taskmaster. It's time to clean it up, you guys. That's a great way to look at it. So you look back at your past and you say, okay, what has really worked for me, and what are some behaviors, relationships, things that I need to get rid of because it's time. And where am I headed? You need to look at those things next to what are my goals. In other words, all this baggage is going to weigh me down to get me to my goal. What got me here today is not, rarely it ever is, you guys. As you know, we're constantly changing and evolving. And sometimes old habits and old ways that we maneuvered in the world or got what we needed or survived or felt secure, as we grow and mature and we change our goals and we expand, those behaviors or activities or people, places, or things do not work for us anymore in terms of, or in juxtaposition to where we're headed. You know, when I talk about Saturn, and I've said this to a lot of my clients, so if you're one of my clients and you're listening to this, you will have heard this metaphor before, but I think it is so perfect when it comes to Saturn. There's this scene in the movie Wild, based on the book by Cheryl Strayed, and I'm probably saying her name wrong. Love this movie. But I was struck when I watched this movie, being an astrologer, there's a scene in it that I just went, that is the lesson that Saturn teaches us. And that is literally a metaphor of the process of how we deal with Saturn. So, what is this metaphor? There's a scene in the movie where Reese Witherspoon's character has made it halfway through this nearly impossible hike through the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's like the Appalachian Trail. It's just as hard. And she was a novice hiker, and she met some more professional or more, expert hikers on the way, and quickly learned, wow, I'm not very good at this. I don't know what I'm doing. And she somehow barely, with bloody feet, exhausted and hungry, made it to a halfway mark. And it was a respite station. And she meets, the wise man, the Saturn metaphor man, at this camp. And he lives at this camp, and he has seen hikers, throughout all the years. They come through this area, and he's running it. So he sees her walk up, and she's this tiny little blonde girl with a pack that's like 4 times bigger than her on her back, with literally bloody feet. She pulls off her shoes. She has the wrong size shoes. Whatever. He looks at her, and he notices her, and he goes over to her and he says, I'm really impressed. Like, way to go. Look where you've come from. Look what you did. That's amazing what you just accomplished. By the way, do you know, I think she asked him, have you seen Bob or, some of the people that she had met along the trail that she figured had already gotten to the rest station? And he said, well, they didn't make it. So some of the folks that she even met along the way that she was so impressed by hadn't made it as far as she had made it. So he was very complimentary and encouraging to her that she had made it this far. He got with her and looked at her in this very wise way and said, so, what are your plans? Where are you headed? Are you going to go do the second leg, or are you going to stop here? What do you want? Okay, so don't miss the metaphor here. He complimented her and asked her to look back at her past, what she'd just done. Good for you. I know it was hard. Look at all, I see how you barely got here with the resources that you had in place, but good for you. Now, what do you desire? What's your dream? What's your goals? What do you want now that you've gotten to this present moment at the way station, the Saturn way station? And she says, I want to do the rest of the hike. And he looked at her again and said, do you really want to do that? She said, yes, I really want to do it. And he asked her, will you take my advice? Will you let me give you some advice? And she said, yes, I am willing. So more part of the story, you need to be willing to take the advice, right? To listen at this way station in your life, wherever you find yourself in the Saturn moment. Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to take advice? She said yes. So he walks her over to these long tables. And, the pack, literally, it's really funny. If you've seen the movie, it's 3 times as big as her. And he asks her to unpack the pack. So she takes everything out of that enormous pack and she lays it out almost in a grid structure all the way down these tables. And he asks her to go through each item with him. And he says, one of them is a stove, a little hot plate. Do you need that? Yeah, I need hot food. It's going to take me 3 or 4 months to get through this hike. I need hot food when I'm... And he looked at her again and he said, see all these things here? What got you here is not going to get you to your goal. You're going to have to get rid of a lot of this, or you're not going to make it. Like, you won't survive. Like, you've survived this far with this, good for you. But where you're headed, there's some new challenges, there's some new terrain, it's a different season, and you will not make it with these things. So I'm not going to, he's not going to force her to get rid of anything, but it literally is going to be worse for her if she wants to get to where she's going and she doesn't want to stay where she is. She's got to get rid of some things. So, and it was hard, and it was her personal choice, and she had to choose each thing. So this is really what Saturn teaches us, you guys. It's a time where you have to stop and you have to personally edit things that are hard to edit. It's time to delay gratification. Saturn is about delaying gratification. Saturn is about discipline. So she had to have the discipline to, eat cold cereal that was light in her pack for 3 or 4 months. And the question is, you guys, how bad, when you're having a Saturn transit, how bad do you desire growth? When you choose growth, are you willing to make sacrifices for it because you love yourself that much? That's what Saturn's about, you guys. And, another metaphor I like to use, and my clients have heard this, it's the metaphor of, you go to the doctor for your checkup. Again, you're at your way station. You're at that moment, right? And the doctor comes in and says, okay, if you want to get well, if you want to get here, you need to take this medicine. Do you want cherry flavor, orange flavor, or lime flavor? And it's your choice, right? And it's also your choice not to take the medicine. So if you're like, nope, I don't want to lose the weight. I don't want to, take care of myself more. I don't want to leave my husband. I don't want to have more discipline with my child because it'll be harder. And I know that it's going to be a lot of fighting or a lot of pushback. I don't want to leave my job. I'm scared. Well, what Saturn does, which is why Saturn gets a bad rap, and why Jesse was like, oh, that's the bad planet. So what Saturn does in those moments, it turns up the discomfort. We'll just put it that way. Turns up the discomfort. So the bottom that Saturn gives us, it'll give you another bottom, and another bottom, and another bottom, and another bottom. And guess what? You can kick and scream and push back and say, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. And Saturn's like, okay, this has got to be your choice. I'm going to turn up the heat in that frying pan. I'm going to turn up the heat. So going back to the metaphor with the doctor, you know what happens to that adult child, whatever, when we're all being that child, when we're like, I'm not doing it. Guess what? You get forced down on the ground, you get your mouth pried open, and you get it shoved down your throat. So Saturn really, how bad, are you willing to take the medicine? And it is medicine, you guys. It's not just drudgery. It's not pain for the sake of pain. Any challenge, pain, obstacle that Saturn gives us, or quite frankly, it's typically things that we know we need to get rid of and we know we need to clean up, that it's not going to be easy, so we put it off, we put it off, we put it off. Any of those things, Saturn wants us to change those things so that we'll get better. It's really for our own spiritual growth. It's for our own benefit. So, given all that information, when we have a Saturn return, what does that mean? Well, typically, people in that age group, and think about yourself if you've already passed that time, or if you're headed into that time between the ages of 27, 30, again, you can look at your chart and you can look at an ephemeris and you can find your own, exactly what that time period is exactly in your life. Or are you someone who's having their second Saturn return? So you're coming up on your mid-50s to early 60s. That's your second Saturn return. This is when, you guys, you need to reset goals. It's time to really make some hard decisions to change your life. What do you want? What do you desire? Do you want to go on that next hike? Where do you want to go? So that's what this is about. I have a lot of clients, we just talked about the returns. I have so many clients, it's amazing, who have never gone to an astrologer or a psychic or anything like that. And they're essentially, sometimes people do this for the first time because they're having a hard time. And I've talked about that on some other shows. With Darshana and I did a show about kind of what are a lot of the clients coming to us for, or why do they show up, to our practices. Typically, when I tell you, I would say close to, and I can't believe this number is so high, but I think I'm being conservative, 50% at least of the people that come to me are having some sort of Saturn transit that is strong. Some of the strongest Saturn transits are when they're coming right through somebody's 12th house to their first and their second house. Why is that? Well, think about it. And again, that's another cycle. It always takes 27 to 30 years. So that's another cycle that somebody's hitting. And it's when, our 12th house is our house of our unconscious, our psychology, our spiritual selves. So we first start to feel it rumbling in our dreams, in our spiritual life. We feel this sort of discomfort or malaise, or just, I don't know, things just start to not feel right. And you might know what it is, but you're not, maybe it's still in your unconscious, right? So the unconscious starts bubbling up in your 12th house when Saturn starts coming through it. When it starts to hit your ascendant and your first house, it's time. It's time for you to make those changes. Your first house is your relationship with yourself, and it's who you are, especially on the surface, and how you appear to the world. So when Saturn rolls through our first house over our ascendant, it's just come through our 12th house, so we've already been having that discomfort, that unconscious bubbling up of, wait a minute, maybe I'm not so happy in this marriage. Wait a minute, maybe I wasn't seeing this job situation like it really is. I'm starting to really, wait a minute, I've just been working so hard and keeping my head down, and I haven't really been thinking about my health. I haven't really been paying attention to the toll this is taking on me. And so that's what starts bubbling up. When it hits your ascendant, it's on. Lesson, Saturn, you're in a class. You're in the Saturn class. And it starts making things worse until you start flowing with the Saturn energy and saying, you know what? Okay, it's time. I'm going to make some changes now. I'm going to put discipline in my life. I'm going to do some hard things, make some hard choices that I've been delaying. I'm going to delay my gratification. I'm going to put my comfort aside, and I'm going to do some of these hard things I've been putting off. I talk about Saturn in another way. I liken it to when the bill has come. So, you've been having a nice dinner and you've gone off your diet and you've had a little too much to drink and you've said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get that dessert tonight. And you know what, I've been on a budget. I'm just going to splurge. I haven't done this in a while, right? And you've had a great time. And then, there's that moment. It's like the bill comes. Oh, wow. It's like, wake up. Wait a minute. You come out of your fog. Yeah, well, we spent a lot of money. Then the next morning, another bill comes. Oh, I'm kind of hungover. 4 days later, another bill comes. Oh, my pants are I can't fit into this dress. Urgh! Saturn. That's Saturn. So imagine that happening, and those of you who have come to me with the Saturn transit know this, when all that's happening in your life, right? You've been ignoring your wife, and what she's been telling you annoys her. All of a sudden, the bill comes. The volume or the pressure or the dial's turned up. This is Saturn. Turns it up. The discomfort, the consequences start piling on, you guys. Consequences start piling on. That's why everybody gives Saturn a bad rap. Here's the thing. Saturn is not put in, Saturn is an energy that I believe God gives us, right? Not to torture us, not just to make us miserable or make things harder for us. It's a gift. It's a gift to push us, at times lazy humans who don't want to be in pain. None of us do, who want to feel good, who are sensual beings. We want our sensual lives. We don't want discomfort. It helps us get out of that so we can push into having better habits and better discipline and get out of those bad relationships and, start creating a better pattern in your relationship. To start treating your body better. Saturn is pushing us through discomfort to make these choices. Well, I've had people ask me, okay, well, there are other transits that do this in a different way. And let's talk about that for a second. First of all, Jupiter, the only thing Jupiter does, and I'll do a show on Jupiter, is give us what we want. So, Jupiter could be hitting our second house and all of a sudden you've got a check in the mail, the tax returns more than you thought. Or you get a phone call and it's your mom saying, I don't think you realized you had a distant uncle and he just left you a bunch of money. That's not Saturn, that's Jupiter. Jupiter's grace. Jupiter just gives us stuff for free, right? Uranus is a different kind of transit when it comes to growth. Uranus, unlike Saturn, that asks us and requires us to make the change, right? Uranus just changes everything for us. Uranus is the tornado that takes the house away, or the car wreck that kills your partner, or the tsunami that flattens the town. Or, in a positive light, it's the lottery ticket. All of a sudden, you win the lottery and all your life has changed. It's out of your hands with that kind of transit. So Saturn is the transit that requires it to be in our hands. It requires us to take responsibility for our hike, if you will. It requires us to take responsibility for studying and getting the right load, the right tools, getting in the right situations, getting ourselves in an optimal place in all the different buckets of our life to achieve our dreams, to get what we want, to acquire and be able to live what we desire. So it's all really positive. That's what Saturn's pushing us into. But I want to talk about for a second why there's another really beautiful gift from God about the layer of us having to do it ourselves. Let's talk about that for a second. The bigger gift, it's sort of a trick. We have all these things we want, like, this is, whenever you're having a Saturn transit, it's a great time to do a vision board, right? What do you desire? People have vision boards, which I think is so powerful. So what are on the vision boards? I want to be in a relationship. I want to live in this mansion. I want to travel to Europe, or whatever your goal is. A lot of times it's things, or those things that, getting something. It's about getting something. And so that is our motivation, which is beautiful and wonderful. To desire things that's what we're here to do, is expand and desire things. But there's a deeper layer to this that is the bigger gift. And if you can get this, you guys, all of the suffering and the discomfort that you feel with the Saturn transit, there's a deeper joy and a deeper willingness that you can have towards it. And that gift is the reason that it has to be our choice. The reason that it has to be you leaving your marriage. It has to be you leaving your job. You have to do it. Because when you get to the other side of this transit and you look back and you see all the hard work you had to put in, all the sacrifice, all the discomfort, all the people you had to piss off, right? All the discomfort that you chose. You have this list of valid and concrete evidence of self-love. And this point, if you can get anything else from today's show, you get the evidence of self-love. You were willing to do those hard things because you love yourself and you want better for yourself. So it essentially builds, Saturn helps us build, and it's an earth sign, building the foundation of trust in ourselves, that we love ourselves enough to do what we need to do to better ourselves and to love ourselves and to care for ourselves. That is a gift that we can give ourselves, that no one can ever take away from us, and that no circumstance, however extreme, can take away from us. And that is the gift of Saturn. So I hope after the show today that you will not give Saturn such a bad rap, and that you will understand that it might be a great idea to get really focused and get with your chart and understand what class you're taking. Like, get conscious of, what class am I taking right now that Saturn's given me? When we're unconscious of it, we'll feel like a victim to all, why is everything so hard? And, all this is happening to me. And it's about being accountable and saying, okay, this, I'm willing. That's all you have to say with Saturn. I'm willing and I desire. So if you can get that, I think a lot of these circumstances in your life will get a lot easier. So thank you. That's going to be the conclusion of the show today. I love talking about Saturn, you guys. I would love to hear from you on the message boards about this. I actually am a Capricorn who does psychic work and astrology work. So it's no wonder, right? Capricorn rules Saturn, that this topic comes up all the time for me. So I'd love to talk about it further. So thank you very much for coming today. I'm going to have a lot more shows on astrology topics. And love you guys. See you later.